Hey guys, welcome back to some more AFK Arena. Today we're back over on the YouTube account, and that is right, it is time for the June tier list. Now we know that Rimuru is coming, we know that Shoni is coming, or Shawnee is going to be coming down the pipeline. We don't know exactly where they're going to be in the tier list, but we did have a few additional changes in there. So let's hop over and we're going to take a look at this. All right, guys, so here we are looking at the June tier list. Now, one thing to note is it's crazy because the year is halfway over. June, of course, marking the 6th month of the year, which means, again, tier list that we've been doing every single month for a couple months now. Incredibly popular, and always looking at where the heroes are kind of being positioned. Some of them moving up and down, in and out of a few different tiers. But looking at the SSS tier, which is, I'm assuming, where exactly both of the new dimensional heroes are going to be. When you look at Rimuru, it seems like it is pretty broken looking at the damage, and I feel like ranking up their rate with Rem and Amelia are going to work right into that SSS tier, and I think it is really going to be early, but I feel like those heroes are super strong. Haven't tested them out yet, but just seeing the skills and abilities they possess, it seems pretty broken when you look at the buffing. But let's go through this, guys. First, we are looking at Liberta. That is right. Still holds the #1 slot. It might be Rimuru that could be in there soon, followed by Lavatoon, and then the Awakened version of Shamira. Now, of course, looking at the primary hero, when you look at the Awakened heroes, the Awakened version of Shamira and the Awakened version of Athalia are the two biggest primary ones to really build because of the utility. They are used in every single game mode, even used in Treasure Scramble where it's just kind of basic. We're using them in campaign formations. Everywhere in AFK Arena, we are using these heroes. Now, what you'll note is right here, Lucilla and Damia are bob neck and neck. Usually it was Liberta, and then it was building out Lavatoon, then building out Damia. We're seeing a lot of utility out of Lucilla, but ultimately because of Damia's ability to keep heroes alive, I would probably go in there and I would build Damia out first before I did Lucilla, again, just because of the utility that she does possess. Then we look at some of the regular faction heroes, which of course is Jerome, and then we have Ivan. Both of them are the mega buffers that we see within AFK Arena. Falls right in line with Palmer, also a very strong buffer. And I feel like Shoni or Shona is going to be another one, again, falling into this SS tier because of the amazing support that this hero is going to be possessing. Now, of course, we have the Awakened version of Athalia, and then Rem and Amelia. Rem, of course, a lot of damage. Not doing as much damage as we've seen because, of course, power creep is starting to take over some of the heroes. But Amelia is still up here and super high because of the crowd control aspect. Not only the ability to immediately crowd control a team, which is pretty broken, but also the energy regeneration for enemies on that team or for the heroes on that team, again, makes it as a super strong hero within AFK Arena. Then we have the Awakened version of Leica, still very prevalent in the SSS tier. Again, when you look at the delay coming in there with the damage output she has, it is very strong. And then, of course, Palmer, and then Naruko still holding on with the tiny tank. And again, when you look at Naruko with Nadia, as a buffer, as a damage dealer, as a tank, it's kind of crazy how strong the hero really is. And I'm super impressed with the Mauler hero, which, of course, we have a new Mauler on this list that we're going to get to in just a little bit. Looking at the second tier, which is the SS tier, we have the Awakened version of Baden. Again, when you start looking at multiple game modes, Baden, the Awakened version of Baden, and the original version of Baden, if you haven't built, is still seeing a little bit of play, which is really cool to see. Then, of course, we have Gavis and we have Eugene, both of them working not only together, but we're also seeing a lot of formations where they are built independently of each other, and they're still doing well in formations. We know Eugene is being as a damage dealer on his own, where Gavis is being run a lot of times with the Awakened version of Belinda as kind of the support aspect more than the damage dealing mage, and it still works incredibly well. Now, Solus still doing incredibly well. Again, one of the few support Awakened heroes that we have seen, the Awakened version of Lucius. Again, not really many heroes to replace him in the niche formations that is being used. But when you start looking at the Curse Realm, the Nightmare Corridor, Treasure Scramble, three of the primary places where all of these heroes are still having an incredible amount of utility. Now, the Awakened version of Sophia, of course, the other support Awakened hero that we have, again, still seeing a lot of play, still seeing a lot of utility in formations as a buffer, and that is really where she excels, the shielding and the buffing, the survivability aspect that we do see in these teams. Now, looking at Aethys, still another one, guys. Damage amplification aspect if you have the signature item built, but also seeing an incredible amount of utility and really durability when it comes to the tanking role to take a hit, and also provides crowd control for a lot of other heroes. Now, the awakened version of Belinda is starting to come down the tier list a little bit. Used to be the SSS #1 hero, and of course, power creep, just like every hero, has slowly taken over the hero. Tricia, again, kind of niche formation. Same with Scarlet. In this, really think of a bigger picture when it comes to the tier list, because a lot of these heroes, a lot of players will say, well, I don't know where we're using Scarlet. Well, if you don't have the awakened version of Belinda, if you're missing some of these heroes, if you don't have anyone built out or everyone built out kind of in their entirety, these are going to be the heroes that are very high burst damage. Scarlet, of course, still being used in the Nightmare Corridor, but these are the heroes that are going to fill in a lot of the damage dealing slots. If you don't have all these awakened heroes built, if you don't have everyone in AFK Arena built, these are some of the big heroes that are the sub heroes, because they are still doing an incredible amount of damage. And of course, looking at Tricia and looking at Scarlet, they can do damage super fast, which is the reason why a lot of players still use them in that Nightmare Corridor. Now, of course, we have Tamris in here for the crowd control and the buffing. We have Athiel in here for the buffing. The awakened version of Thane. Now, we are actually seeing a pretty good resurgence of him in the Nightmare Corridor with this iteration. And of course, as new bosses are introduced, it can definitely change it. Now, of course, Silas as a buffer. We have Rosaline in here, usually running with Belinda, but we've also seen it with Rem. We've seen it with the awakened version of Shmira. We've seen it with Athalia. We've seen a lot of different variations where Rosaline does come in. And then we have Lady Simona, which is showing up in the SS tier. That is right, guys, from a hero that was absolutely not used at all in AFK Arena upon the introduction, is seeing a ton of play right now in a lot of different formations, in a lot of different game modes, not only as a damage dealer, but also as that energy disintegration aspect. I am really impressed with how well Lady Simona does do. Getting into the S tier, Matria, again, kind of in here. Orin, kind of in here as a substitution for the awakened version of Thane. Then when we start looking at some of the support heroes, looking at Joan, of course, a pretty good buffer, a healer, a stunner. Then, of course, the twins with the super cycle still being used in a few formations. Now, Albedo is going to be a very questionable one, and this is going to be one to absolutely watch, because depending on the impact that we see with the two new heroes, we could see Albedo's utility go through the roof, because she runs with them for the attack rating buff. And again, we're going to have to watch her and see exactly where she's going to be used. Now, of course, if you have the plus 40 signature item with her, it does make an impact on the damage those heroes are going to do. But again, we're going to have to see exactly what that looks like. Now, Kelthan's another one starting to be used in a couple different formations. Originally, didn't see a lot of utility, but starting to see a lot more out of there. Mortis as a buffer. Anasta, again, running a couple sub formations. Same with Mulan. And then, of course, we have Adrian and Elise, which are the dancers. Them at a plus 40 signature item are seeing an incredible amount of play because of the ability to buff the backline, the whole allied side. If you do not have them built up to the plus 40, the utility of them drops to almost nothing. Short of an invade team, short of being on the enemy side, they are not going to have any utility at all, which of course Brutus is the invade king. When you look at Scrag, when you look at Brutus, definitely doing very, very well. Halos I'm still using in the Temple Rift, still does pretty well. Oden, again, very strong sub. Looking at Rowan, looking at Rain, the exact same. Now, Olgath starting to see a little bit of decline in the usage, and it looks like Kelthan is taking a lot of the place where we've seen him. And of course, it seems unless we have a really strong hypo hero that comes out, might not see a lot of utility with these heroes overall. Merlin, of course, for the survivability, Kinisa and Rook with the crowd control. And our first Draconic hero, that is right, Nyla comes up from, I believe, a B tier to an S tier, which is, of course, because she is being used everywhere. As a support hero, I built her out, I maxed her out, we got her to 5 stars. Definitely where we wanted to build her out, and working incredibly well in a ton of comps. I am absolutely loving how this hero is performing. And again, when you look at the Draconic heroes, one of the only ones to really focus on building out when it comes to the primary 3 that you use diamonds and scrolls for. Getting into the A tier now, again, looking at some of these, we are seeing Olna drop down a little bit, and I mean, I would even probably put her up a little bit higher just within the A tier. Now, the reason for that is majority of the campaign formations, we're still seeing her used, but that is really the only place we're seeing her used. She has been dropped out of everything else. And even with the campaign formations, if you're running specific teams like crowd control teams, you're not going to be using Alna, even where I'm at almost through chapter 63. I'm not using Alna in formations at all anymore. So again, the utility of this hero is starting to finally drop off. But of course, we're going to have to see what Rimuru does in here and how effective it really comes in. Then, of course, right here, falling into the A tier is Villainy. Now, we don't know exactly the impact of the hero at this point, but overall, we're seeing her appearing in a lot of places. Again, when you start thinking of the Cursed Realm, when you think of the Nightmare Corridor, when you think of the Treasure Scramble, some of the key places she is actually showing up in formations. We are seeing her have a really big impact on PvP, which we figured, but of course, running with a couple other heroes as a mauler, she is still doing incredibly well within formations. Then, of course, Leica in here for the boost. Then we have Gwen, so the second Draconic hero. Now, overall, if you're looking to build up and really make any progression in the Dragon Forge, they have to be built, period. That's it. If you don't have the heroes, you're not going to get the buffs. If you don't get the buffs, you're not going to have the exchange item or the token to actually build up the rest of your heroes. So you're pretty much shooting yourself in the foot if you're saving all your resources, because you won't be able to go through that Dragon Forge. Now, looking at Hodgkin again as a buffer, falling down a little bit more. Lorzin linking, the only place I believe we see him now is the Thorn Cheese. Dolrath, not seeing a lot of play at all. Same with Yennefer. We have Screg. The original version of Aziz still holding into the A tier again, still seeing a little bit of utility with the energy regeneration that he provides in the Slumbering Seal comps. Then, of course, crowd control right here with Leonardo. We have Queen in here. Again, seems like she's going to be falling out pretty hard. Now, Graz was actually in I believe it was a Cursed Realm formation that we literally just run, which was kind of crazy to see his kind of comeback and a little bit of utility in there. Then, of course, I'm kind of interested to see as well, when you look at some of the buffs that are buffing not only the heroes, but the entities, where Graz makes a lot of minions. It could be super broken. I want to see what it looks like. Then Estrilda as a buffer. Nevi, again, kind of dropping out. Same with Edwin. Then in here, we have Cassius, again, not seeing a lot of play. Same with Polina. It seemed like upon the release of these heroes, they were doing pretty well, thought they had a lot of potential, and then, of course, nobody's really using them anywhere. We're not even seeing them in any of the 3 primary game modes, and also not seeing them in campaign formations at all, unfortunately. Then Mishka, again, just kind of getting a little bit older. Damon, not really the super carry that he was, because a lot of players are using Rem to go ahead and carry through a lot of the campaign. The original version of Taylene, again, not seeing a lot of utility. Robin Hood, niche formations, kind of PvP, Treasure Scramble. Same with Valkyrie. And Braun, we're actually seeing in a few places. He's been popping up kind of here and there, but not in a lot of places. Any place that he can get to the other side. And I'm thinking specifically of some of the boss modes, where if he can get to the other side, he actually does pretty well. If he doesn't have the ability to get to the other side, it is completely shut down in its entirety. Then, of course, we have Screg and Raku, which used to be together. Crescio doesn't really see much use anymore. Same with the 5-pull with Skarath, Saurus. Now, interesting enough, Orthos is starting to see, again, a little play with some of the damage dealers. I want to see what these 2 new dimensionals are doing. Then, of course, Hildwyn is down here. Now, Hildwyn has appeared in 1 or 2 kind of niche formations, but again, if you don't have him, you can replace him with another hero. Not a super amount of utility. So even thinking kind of big tier list overall is when you start looking pretty much at the SSS and the triple S tier. These are the majority of the primary heroes in AFK Arena. When you start getting into the A tier, these are a lot more of kind of the niche formation heroes that we do see. And again, looking at like Villainy, that is being used every here and there, as well as a few other ones where we might have a one-off where Gwen is being used in a formation, but overall their utility is not sky high, which is what we look for in here. Now, when you start getting a little bit further into kind of the B tier, the C tier, looking at these heroes themselves, these are usually the tower runners. These are one that are kind of the fill-in slots for a lot of other heroes. Even looking, Polina is now down here. But again, when you start looking out here, probably short of the original version of Baden, which again, if a lot of players don't have him built, not a big reason to build him. A lot of times you can just borrow the hero. But even looking at Khazard, not really being used. Looking at Tarnos, even the Awakened version of Taylene, not really being used. And again, even looking at the C tier and the D tier, it is the exact same. These are heroes that you're probably never going to use or build if you're newer to AFK Arena. If you're an older player like me that have been playing for 5 years, these are heroes. Most of them I don't even use in the towers anymore, even though I have a lot of them, to a 30960 build, built out pretty well, built out pretty high. Unfortunately, at this time, we're not seeing any of them. And that is because ultimately in 5 years, the power creep has taken over these heroes in their entirety. And unfortunately, we're not seeing them. Now, with that being said, though, remember, Entendre right here is getting the Awakened version. So we know we're getting our two-dimensional heroes, which are coming up in a couple days. But Entendre is going to be the next Awakened hero. So we're going to have to keep an eye out for exactly what that looks like. And also looking at what Albedo's going to do, as well as the two new dimensional heroes. As we continue this tier list, that means the next one, we're going to have new Awakened heroes, new dimensional heroes, a bunch of things going on when it comes to our July tier list. All right, guys, so that is going to do it for today's video. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. And as always, thank you guys for watching.